Hey everybody, Ryan and Greg here with Bench Your Addiction. Today we're going to talk about like how to move into habits from mindfulness and how to best get there and how to best treat your life into building these healthy habits that are going to last the rest of your life and what that looks like and how that really translates into actual life instead of just what someone tells you, right? And that's about today, so we're going to get started.
Absolutely. So yeah, man, it's been it's been good. Like the small incremental changes. That's what they have to be. They have to be small and incremental. The big grandiose changes. They really don't stick. But the problem is, and we talked about like around like your first thing that you do for homework is we're going to track your food because if you don't know what you're taking in, then you can't really make an informed decision on what to change, right? And so it's taking stock or taking inventory. Like this is where I started personally because this is where like I had coaches direct me and it worked. It worked for me really well. Is to start to take inventory of what I did on a daily basis, how much food I was eating, how much caffeine I was taking in, how much sleep I was getting, how much water I was drinking. Like just take a look at what it is that I'm already doing. How many hours am I on my screen? Like pull up the screen time hours on my cell phone. Obviously, you can look at where that's partitioned. So I do a lot of business on my phone. So it's like what time was I on my phone for business, and what time was on my phone mindlessly scrolling social media. Like just take a stock of what it is that I'm doing and then realize, holy shit, I'm doing 2 hours of social media for nothing every single day. And like, that's actually low for a lot of people. If you really take a look at your social media consumption, it's so easy. Like it's all designed to just sit there and like scroll, 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 scroll. If you run out of shit on Facebook, you go to TikTok, you go to Instagram, you go to wherever. And you just end up, 45 minutes here, 30 minutes there, 15 minutes there, another 45 after work or whatever. And like before you know it, you're at 2, 3, 4 hours of wasted time, basically. And just take that inventory. It's like what would I rather be doing with my time? What are the things that are important to me? And start looking at the things that I'm doing. Are the things that I'm doing really saying that I'm prioritizing fitness or I'm prioritizing sleep or I'm prioritizing recovery or I'm prioritizing my food or whatever it is? Do my actions actually resemble someone that cares for my physical health and mental health? And like when I started taking that stock and I realized that that was not the case, I needed to figure out where to start. So I don't know what that looked like for you, like starting to make the changes as you were starting to lose the weight, but like that's where like it was just the awareness around what the hell is it that I'm even doing. And it's like, whoa, there are things that I really don't like, and there are some things that I'm okay with, and starting to chip away at those things that I really, really don't like.
For me, it's a lot of thinking about, like you just said, like what's your purpose, what's your why, like how do you build the habit, right? And so like how do you trick yourself into doing the habit, right? Like one of the things I've been doing lately, like in the past I tended to struggle with, for some reason, dishes in my house, right? Like of everything in my house, like dishes were always like a hard part. So I just started hijacking myself, right? Like out loud while I'm doing them. Like I really like doing dishes. I like a clean kitchen. And I would just say that out loud over and over again. And then eventually I caught myself, like this week I've been like doing all the dishes before I leave the house, making sure I like get them done and feeling good about it. And I was like, oh, I totally hijacked myself. It did work. You know what I mean? Like I feel it in my head. I was like, oh, I actually like this now. I look forward to it. It's like, oh, okay. So like I like to hijack my brain and try to figure myself out how to do that, right? And another thing I do, I really love coffee, right? Like I love the smell of coffee. I love the taste of coffee. So what I do is I have my timer set to the second I walk in the door from the gym. I go to the gym first, come home, I open my front door, and the house smells like coffee because the coffee maker's going. And so I've been hijacking my brain into this habit of like, oh, you get coffee when you get home from the gym. So that means I have to go to the gym first. So then when my alarm goes off and it's early and I don't really want to go to the gym, I just like, oh no, you want coffee. And so you go to the gym, and then I go through the workout, and then I'm like, I get home like, oh, I get coffee now. And like, so I do things like that to hijack my habit, right? Like that's always been one of my favorite things to do. if you read like Atomic Habits, they talk a lot about how the brain just likes to shut off and then kick back on with a little bit of dopamine at the end of the habit. And how do we get to that hijack point? So that's how I've built a lot of habits around that, right? Same with like the after workout meal. Like, man, I'm really looking forward to the after workout meal. Make sure it's like a really enjoyable meal. Like my larger breakfast is like post workout, so same kind of thing. When we used to power lift, it would be like, okay, what are we going to eat afterwards, right, on Saturday? And so it would be like looking forward to powerlifting on Saturday and eating a bunch afterwards. And so I try to find like ways to do that with like my habits. And then as for like habits I don't like, it's the same thing. It's like, why am I doing this thing? And I don't like to talk to myself negatively. So I think about that the habit served me at some point and it now no longer serves me. So how do we change that mindset around the habit, right? I used to habitually just eat food when I got home, like mindlessly, right? Like I would watch TV and snack on something like chips or something. And I was like, oh, that habit doesn't serve me. So what do I do now? Like, I'm like, okay, get home. Like I should probably walk the dog first, right? And so I hijacked that habit. And so now it's like walk first, then, do the rest of my night, right? And those are the kind of things that I do.
Nice. And like, I like that. I like that a lot because I had a coach one time in my life. He went on a rant. He himself was talking on a podcast, and not to me specifically, but it really hit me in the side of the face when he said this. Is like when somebody says they hate cardio. No, you don't. You don't actually hate cardio. You hate what you think cardio is. Like you think that it's not, or you think that it's, or what it's not. Because like I love to lift weights. I love to lift heavy weights. And so cardio is not squatting hundreds of pounds, or it's not deadlifting, or it's not this extreme exertion. And I had this hard correlation I had a difficult time correlating cardio to something that was enjoyable or something that would serve the purpose of trying to get stronger. And now I'm in an interesting situation where I don't get to do the heavy lifting until after the surgery and the recovery after the surgery. But I want to find something that's challenging because I personally like something physically challenging. I want it to be something that I have to really consciously put an effort into doing, into completing, and then it makes me feel better after I'm done. So what I've taken to doing is challenging myself. How high can I get my heart rate and still nasal breathe? So
cool.
Yeah, and it's been a really interesting, and I found out that it's right around 150 beats per minute. That I really it is difficult, if not sometimes impossible, to try to keep my mouth shut. Because this morning, that's exactly what I did. I got it up to, it was in the 140s, and then I was okay at 140s, so I upped the Sterimel just a little bit, and then got it up to, up to 150, 155, and that's when it hit me in the side of the face. And like I've changed my relationship with cardio again, because like I used to do cardio all the time as a collegiate athlete with swimming. So cardio is my base. Like that's where I started into athletics, and I got away from it because quite honestly, by the end of my collegiate swimming career, I had coaches that really did not nurture my love of the sport. We'll leave it at that. That's putting it kindly. But I had coaches that just really didn't help me enjoy the sport at all. And so when I was done with swimming, I remember the thought, like when I put my hand on the wall at the end of my last race at the national championship my senior year, I vowed almost to not ever take a shower again. I was like, I'm never fucking getting wet again. Like I'm never doing it. You can't make me do it. But so for a long time, I had a really hard time with wrapping my head around doing cardio. I had done it, but I never enjoyed it. And when I heard my coach say, no one put a gun to your head and made you hate cardio. Like nobody makes you hate something. Like that's the power of your own perspective. And if something is difficult, let's say that your mind says cardio is difficult. Okay, so even if that's true, cardio is difficult. You thinking that it's difficult adds another layer of difficulty that does not need to be there. And so you're applying friction to an already difficult situation. So instead, do the thing that you don't like to do. And there's just like ties into exactly how you were talking about the dishes. Do the thing that you don't like to do And do not let yourself say that you hate it. Do not let yourself say, like, if you can't say that you like it, then at least stop yourself from saying that you hate it. And in the way that, and what helped me to bridge that gap into this is something that I can enjoy is like I personally need something that's going to challenge me physically. And so I found the thing that I can do to make it challenging, and I can sink into that. And like at the end of the workout, I feel as though I have accomplished something. And that sense of accomplishment is what drives me to come back to do it again tomorrow. And so, like, finding these benchmarks that make me feel on top of something, like I just did something difficult. Like it reinforces self-esteem. It reinforces confidence in my ability to do the difficult things. It reinforces the confidence that regardless of what the task is, I can do it. No matter, like, it might take longer depending on what it is, but I can do it. And that's one of the things that, like, being able to break down your goal into practices, skills, and actions. It's something that precision nutrition talks about. So what is your goal, right? What is your big broad brush goal? What is it? What are practices that you need to have in place in order to be able to accomplish that goal? All right, what skills are necessary to be able to do those practices? And then what actions do you need to take to start building up your ability to perform those skills? And being able to reverse engineer a bigger goal into a smaller goal, or into like bite-sized actionable items, gives you a way forward. It gives you the actual application to do something different and be able to do it successfully, because we can't do the big things all at once, especially if we've never done them or if we haven't done them in a long time. So, like, pick a goal, pick a habit, pick a something, and make it as small a change as possible, as small of a shift in your lifestyle and your daily practice or your daily life as it is right now, and do that consistently, and then build on it.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I mean, that's always like the best thing, right? And so, like, I like when you talked about like building self-esteem and building confidence, right? Like, we build self-esteem by doing esteemable acts, and the way that we find value in doing things over and over again is like doing the small habits and like building that confidence and like starting really small. And like that's why I always like to have clients that start like super simple goals, prove to themselves they can do it. Like, let's drink water. Like, I know you have a read story about that. Like, let's drink water successfully. Like, I had a new client start a couple weeks ago, and I was like, cool, your goals this week are sleep and hydration. And she came in this week and she was like, I failed at those. I was like, you thought about them though, right? She's like, yes. And so we broke it down. I was like, you have the water bottle in your hand. You obviously drink the water when it's in your hand. So where is the breakdown? She's like, well, when it's full, I drink it. Once it's empty, I tend not to fill it. And I was like, okay, well, is it difficult to fill? She's like, no, it's next to my desk. It's not very far. It's just the like breaking away from the desk. And I was like, cool. Like, how do we get you to fill it? Right? Like, maybe we put mints on top of the water machine. Maybe we put a gold star chart. Like, what do you want? What is something we can hijack you into like doing this habit to where you fill the water? Because if the breakdown is just filling the water and you drink it when it's full, how do we get you to the water cooler? How do we get you over there? Right? Like, and so we kind of broke down that, and that was her homework this week. It's like how to work on that little step, like the bridge that gap into that little step, right? And that's always what I think about. It's like breaking it down, make it achievable, move on to the next goal. Break it down, make it achievable, move on to the next goal. You keep doing that, and then before you know it, you have these like massive stack of healthy habits that lead to the physique you want, like you're talking about, or lead to the healthy goals that you want, or the sport you want to achieve, or whatever the goal is, the overall goal, right? So we break it down into steps, we make it even more manageable, we find out where the problem is in each one of those steps, and just move on from there. So it's always like bridging that gap and figuring out what works best. But I always like really like I actually have fun with it because I'm like, cool, let's figure out this problem, let's solve it, let's make it a challenge. Like I had a friend also recently, like I was talking about like one aspect I'm working on, and so they used a trigger word for me. They were like, I challenge you, and as soon as they said that, I was like, all right, I have to do it now. You know what I mean? Like I have to. Like as soon as you break it into that, for me, like it's all bets are off. I mean, we're doing this, and I'm going to win, right? Like that's obviously my competitive mindset, which works for me, right? Like, and that makes all the habits to get there much more achievable for me because I'm like, once it's a challenge and once it's, how do who see who wins who what, right? Does that work for everybody? No, maybe not, but that's what works for me, and that's what I figured out, right? So finding out like the key phrases and the ways to break it, and yeah, sometimes a gold star chart is all you need, man. I've had multiple clients who are like, I was like, what if we have a gold star chart for you? Every time you lose 2 pounds, we put a gold star up. They're like, yeah. They're like, cool, great. You know what I mean? Like, that's awesome, right? I have a couple other clients that are pretty close in their deadlift PRs, and they're about the same age. They're both in their 50s. They're both men that have been training me a couple of years. And I keep putting their numbers next to each other. And like, they finally met the other day. He's like, I've been chasing your PR for like a year. It was great. I was like, yeah. You know what I mean? He was like, we're getting close. You know what I mean? And so like, that's another way that like kind of triggered. So now the habit to like work out consistently and eat right and everything around going to the gym. One of the clients who's been chasing the other one, he really struggles with like his diet and nutrition, but he knows on Sunday we're going to deadlift heavier on Mondays. And so on Sunday, he tends to eat really good and eat right and make sure he has a good breakfast and make a good lunch because he's looking forward to that deadlift, right? So all the other habits come into play now that he knows he wants to look forward to that deadlift, that end goal. And the in-between stuff is getting easier. And so I keep reminding him, like, hey, you did really good on Sunday night and Monday morning, right? He's like, yeah. I'm like, cool. Can we add half a day to that? Maybe you can do that Saturday morning. He's like, well, that's manageable. I'm like, yeah, let's just make it manageable, man. You know what I mean? Like, just build from there. And so that's kind of what I always kind of work on, like kind of the same thing,
Yeah, and like I love the way that you're talking about this because you're right. Not everyone is motivated the same way.
Yeah.
That's the thing is like we can talk about these conceptual ideas all we want. But everyone like this is where most questions when you ask a conceptual question or whatever it is you can ask, well, what should I do in this scenario? And the answer is almost always it depends. If you look at if you apply the individualistic aspect of it, because you can say, well, I struggle with water and use my intervention, or I struggle to fill my water bottles, and you can use an intervention potentially that you could come up with, and we could brainstorm these ideas. But at the end of the day, what actually is what are the triggers that get you motivated or like will break routine? Because it takes a conscious effort to break a habit. Like we can talk about it all we want, but like there's something to be said about making the change in the first place. So like these ideas, like I just had a conversation with a guy in the Air Force last week, and he's just like me, man. Like he's right now he's hovering about 140 pounds. He wants to at least get himself up to 160, and he struggles with it, man. Like he struggles with it, and because he's just such a fast metabolism, and then like of course he's done these health kicks where he's doing pretty good, but then the weight's still not coming on, so he gets discouraged, and then he says, "F it, I'm gonna go get takeout," and then like there you go, he's like off and running, and usually in his case he just doesn't eat enough, obviously, since he's struggling with his weight, and one of the things like gaining weight. And one of the things that I was talking to him about is like I can give you I can sign you up with Spite Fitness, man. I could give you all the stuff. Bottom line is you're like, in order to get a result, you're gonna have to be uncomfortable. I was uncomfortable for 2.5 years. I was beyond full for 2.5 years. And that's what it took, man. I was 140. I worked up to 165. I worked up to 190-ish. I got up to 200, and now I'm sitting at about 222. My highest weight was about 236. Like in order to get there lean, I've been fat before, and like I got in college, I just did the weight gainer takeout drive through. Give me that extra apple pie. Let's just get calories in. It doesn't fucking matter where they come from. And I got up to 215, but I was fat. Like I was just this slob of a person. Like I'm now 222 and relatively lean. And so, but I talked to him about it. Is like, bottom line is like we will put the plan in place. We'll talk about it. We'll get you taken care of. But you're gonna be uncomfortable when you execute this plan, and are you cool with that? Like there is a sacrifice that will need to be made in order to make this thing happen. And he said he's down, and like time will tell. Time will only tell. because it's easy to talk about. It's not necessarily always that easy to apply. We want to find ways to apply this as easily as possible, but that doesn't always mean easy, right? Especially what the goal is. And so um, that's one of the things is that came to my mind when you were talking, is just like, we want to, as coaches, we need to know how to motivate the people that are in front of us, or like if you're talking to a friend of yours, or like whoever it is, like maybe you're a parent trying to get their kid motivated to work out, or maybe you're trying to get your sibling into it or whatever. You don't have to be a coach, but like the underlying idea is that you've got to find the way to target that person's emotional reaction, because the only what I've found is, like, if I can elicit an emotional response, anger, happiness, sadness, joy, whatever, if I can touch a nerve, then they're like and like they'll get it going. Like I have a woman, like after she came to my last strongman competition, she decided she wants to do her own strongman competition. Well, we're gonna have to lift heavy shit. So one of the things that, like, I know, if I put a weight on a deadlift bar, or if I, or like like we're trying to go a heavy leg press or whatever it is that we're trying to do, we load up a weight and she looks at it and it's a weight that she ain't never done before, and she gets kind of, ooh, like, you sure about this? And it's like, well, I bet you can't do it. You know what? I don't even know I'm wasting my fucking time. We might as well go ahead and strip this weight. And then she'll lose her shit. She'll be so mad at me, and she'll get under the bar, and she's been successful every time. I use that same type of motivational speak to my 66-year-old great grandmother that I trained. She's walking out the fucking door calling me an asshole.
Whatever works, right?
Yeah. So it's understanding the person. Some people need to be consoled. Some people need to be encouraged daily, more often than daily. Some people need to be told you can't do it. Some people need to, whatever it is, right? So understanding that the same, like, we can strive for the same result or even the same habits, but the emotions, or the way that we get there will need to look a little bit different per the person.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like, it's gonna vary person to person. Like, I had a client today, and like, same thing. You know, I put out a new exercise that I made her do, like a superset involving legs, and I looked at it, I was like, we don't have to do it. And like, as soon as I said that, I saw a click in her eyes. She was like, give me the weight. You know what I mean? I was like, we don't have to do it, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's cool. And then like towards the end of the day, I was like, cool, we got to finish with lunges. And she was like, you're kidding, right? And I was like, you knew it was on the program. You knew what was coming up. I told you. I was like, and again, I did the same thing. I was like, well, we don't have to do it. She was like, give it to me. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, yeah, you know what I mean? Like, that's what I'm talking about. You know what I mean? And it's funny what works for some people and what doesn't, right? Like, I'm exactly the kind of person. Like, obviously, my company's named Spite Fitness. Somebody once told me, you can't do that. And I was like, bet, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, that was it, right? You know what I mean? Like, you know, and it's great to, like, for me to live that way, right? Like, does it work for everybody? No, not at all, man. Like, you give me a gold star chart, I don't care about a gold star chart. I want you to tell me I can't do that, or you know, I bet you couldn't do that. Like, that's what gets me motivated, right? And like, it's always going to vary person to person. And it's always going to be like, one thing I found too is like, everybody knows what they should do different. Like, you know, when I sit down with like a nutrition client, I'm like, what are 3 things you feel like would benefit you if you changed your diet? And they list the 3 things. And I'm like, how would you do it? And they tell me how. And I was like, cool, we're going to do that. And they're like, oh, really? And I was like, yeah, man, it's not rocket science. Like, you know, if I put a salad in front of you and a Big Mac in front of you, and you're trying to lose weight, if you pick the Big Mac more often, you're probably not going to lose as much weight if you pick the salad more often. Does that mean never pick a Big Mac or anything? Like, no. Does that mean you should probably lean towards the thing that you know is probably best? Yeah, cool. So how do we get there, right? How do we get there? How do we want to do it, right? And this circles back to like we talked about before, like what your why is. Like, why do you want to get there? You know, like your client, like, they want to do strongwoman competition or strongman competition. Like, cool, you got to lift stuff then. You got to lift shit to get there, right? Like, cool. You know what I mean? Like that's just mechanisms, right? Like, you know, and whatever we do to get there is always like, make it fun as possible, right? Like I think another thing we don't do enough as adults or like our society in general is play, right? Like just play, like turn it into play, turn it into a game, turn it into a challenge, turn it into fun. That's always a way to hijack a habit too, right? Like it's like whatever gets you there is the goal, right? Like that's it, right? Like whatever gets you, whatever mechanism gets you there, that's the goal, right? So, and then like in regards to food, right? Like I was like challenge people to try something new every week and like make one new meal this week. And they're like, well, I don't know how. I'm like, well, how'd you learn anything else you've ever done? And they're like, well, I practiced. And I'm like, okay, so make one new meal this week. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's that simple, man. You know what I mean? Like it, make it even simpler. Try one new vegetable this week. Go to the store. If you don't recognize the vegetable, buy it. Eat that. I'm like, well, I don't know how to cook it. And I'm like, you have a phone in your pocket, right? I'm like, well, yeah. I'm like, it's probably on there. And if not, I probably wrote a recipe about it at some point. So like, it's there, right? You know what I mean? And it's really just about like the habit, right? And then before you know it, you'll be doing it all the time, right? Like, whenever I add like a new something into my routine, I do one at a time, make sure it's simple, make sure it's consistent, and I pair it with something I already do. That's like another skill set I like to do too. Like if I'm going to do X every day and I want to add this new routine, I add it to it, right? Like, cool. Like I added a new like supplement. So I started taking ashwagandha and I was like, well, I tend to drink my pre-workout in the morning before I go to the gym. So if I just put it next to that, I'll remember to take it every day. So far, I haven't missed up with taking it. And it wasn't even a new big hard addition. It was just like, put it next to it. So that's another way to hijack your habit too. You know what I mean? It's just like make it simple, put it somewhere you can do it.
100%, man.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I always like to make it simple, you know what I mean? Or make it a challenge. It really depends. Like my other lifting partner, she is really good at pushing my limits to the limit. And she knows that about me. And, she's a beast, right? Like her strength ratio is insane. And she's like a climbing instructor. And so she'll be like, let's do there's like these set of monkey bars at my gym that go up like 20 feet in the air and down. And I remember when I used to struggle doing them. And now she'll be like, let's go. And then we'll get to one end and she'll just immediately turn around and be like, I'm going to beat you. And like, she always does, but like, I'm getting better. I'm able to do it now. I'm able to follow her and turn around, right? Like keep up with her, right? Like this is a challenge and I like it and it's hard. And there's definitely a point when you're 20 feet in the air on the monkey bars where you just can't fail. I'm looking down, there's like gym equipment beneath me. Someone's squatting underneath us. I'm like, well, I guess I'm doing this because there's not another option, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, so I like to take, options out of it. Like, oh, I have to do it now. You know what I mean? Like another thing I do about like, if I got a meal prep at the end of the day, I'll put that food into my MyFitnessPal and track for my dinner. Like I don't have any chicken at the house. I'm eating a chicken salad for dinner. That means I got to cook chicken tonight. That means I got to go shopping. Like there's all the other mechanisms I got to go to do it, but it's already in my phone and I've already committed to it. So like, I got to figure out how to make chicken tonight in time, right? Like, cool. That's just what I'm doing, right? Is it a challenge? Like, yeah, it's just what I'm already committed to.
Yeah, like the last thing I'll say in regard to that, because it looks like we're getting close to the time, is your mind is so quick. The mind is so quick to come up with the reasons why you can't. And I think this are like that makes something impossible. The story is like a sociology professor in a college was was teaching a class, and like one of the things that he asked was, well, what would society be like if we didn't have a prison system? And the students were confounded. It's like, well, we can't not have a prison system. And he went, okay, but what if we what would it look like if we didn't have one? What would we have to do? And the students immediately went to work, and it took some effort, but they were able to come to a solution. And that's what our minds are for. It takes energy to do that. It takes energy to be able to you sit down and think to the point where your brain might start hurting, or maybe a little bit of frustration, but make it something that has to happen, and then don't look at any reasons why it doesn't work or why it won't work, but instead ask yourself, how can I make this work? And you'll be astounded at your brain's ability to problem solve. That's how humanity became the apex predator. So I'll finish on that.
That's how humanity became the apex. Yeah, I mean, it is problem solving, right? All right, man. Well, that'll segue into our next week, man. Like next week is just going to be about problem solving, how to solve your biggest fitness problems and kind of move on from there. And that's about it. And comment below if you guys have any questions or anything that you want to touch on. And that's about it. This is Ryan and this is Greg, and see you all next week.
Peace.